gonna do intro now, then we're gonna start Moby.
So that wasn't the intro?
No, it is.
It seemed like a pretty solid intro.
Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, that is the voice of my friend Moby. Welcome to the One Life, One Chance podcast. And now I'm not in my house right now. I'm not in my kitchen. I'm at Moby's house. So thanks for having me, Moby. Welcome to the show, Moby.
Hi. I'm a little... Well, in hindsight, I kind of wish I had come to your house.
Yeah.
For a few reasons. One, so I could play Max's drums. Does he still have drums there?
Hell yeah.
Okay. The other is, I'm assuming Stella would be there.
He loves Stella.
I met Stella when I think like the first day you got Stella.
She went in your pool too.
And I remember we had lunch at Cafe Gratitude and Stella was there and she was like the size of my hand.
Stella's beautiful and Stella's been to your pool parties too.
And she has such solid comedic timing. Like the videos that you guys make in your van and Stella's just in the middle like the straight person. And whether she's dumb or oblivious or like just the most
checked out,
perfect, like comedic canine.
She's used to the Morses, I guess, around the music and the drums and the insanity. So yeah, I love her in that. All right, so Moby, I know you as Moby as my friend. The world knows you as Moby, the artist, which you're an amazing artist. But I want to talk about a bunch of the roots and stuff of your growing up and stuff like that. I know that obviously you were born in New York. We know that. Mm-hmm. And then, so you were born in New York. You were born in Harlem.
I was born on 148th Street, and then lived in New York until I was 2. And when I was 2, my dad died, and so my mom and I moved back to Connecticut, where she had grown up, and I grew up poor white trash in Connecticut, like on food stamps and welfare until I was around 18.
And when you think about Connecticut, I don't think poor white trash. I think of like, but actually, Danbury, Connecticut, by the Anthrax.
I lived in Danbury.
Okay.
And then I also lived in Darien, Connecticut,
okay,
which is one of the wealthiest towns in the world. But my mom and I were on food stamps and welfare, and she dated Hell's Angels.
Wow.
So it was weird. Like my first serious girlfriend in high school, her dad owned a fleet of oil tankers. And my second serious girlfriend, when I went off to college, she was descended from Bill Hewlett, who started the company Hewlett-Packard.
Okay.
So she had a trust fund of at least a couple of $1 billion.
Wow.
And so there's me, like my mom and I had our little black and white TV with the 8-inch screen and the actual, like the clothes hanger as the antenna. Mm-hmm. And I would go to my girlfriend's house and she would have just gotten back from Paris and be on the way to like the Hewlett compound in Lake Tahoe.
Jesus.
And I visited this compound and it was so out of control. They had a railroad connecting the houses on the compound.
Wow. That's crazy money.
And my mom and I are like, well, we're watering down the juice and the milk to make it last longer because we didn't have enough money for food. Wow. So it was a weird way to grow up.
And how did your dad pass away, if you mind me asking?
He, like me, was an alcoholic.
Okay.
And he got drunk and was driving too fast and drove into a wall.
Wow. Yeah, I lost my dad at 3, so I can totally relate to that. So you're in New York, but how long did you live in Connecticut for before you moved to New York on your own?
Well, growing up in Connecticut, because Darien, where I grew up, is about 45 minutes from Manhattan. And when I discovered punk rock, the way I discovered punk rock
that was one of my questions. So yeah.
There was this movie called Mr. Mike's Mondo Video.
Okay.
And it was a writer from Saturday Night Live named Mike O'Donoghue. And it was basically, because this was 1977, 78, he put together a bunch of video clips and released them as a movie.
Okay.
And I went to go see it, and one of the clips was Sid Vicious singing My Way. And
I think I remember seeing that. But he did another movie too, though, probably.
It was in the Great Rock and Roll Swindle.
That's right.
And I sat in the theater, and he came out, and he did My Way, and I was like, what is this? And then...
How old were you then?
I would have been 13,
okay,
I guess.
Yeah.
And then around that time, WNEW started playing The Clash and Elvis Costello. But I don't know if you remember this, but like being a punk rocker or a new wave kid, there was so much stigma associated with it.
100%.
So like I couldn't go to school and admit to people that I liked The Clash.
Okay,
because you'd get beaten up. Mm-hmm. And then finally a couple of my other friends admitted they also liked The Clash.
So there's camaraderie. There's yeah.
And then I remember our coming out party as punk rock new wave kids was we went to see Talking Heads. It would have been 1980 in Central Park, and we bought T-shirts.
Okay.
And my friend Jim was the only one of us brave enough to wear his Talking Heads t-shirt to school. And so like, I remember that first day of, I guess it would have been high school, and he walked down the hallway with his Talking Heads shirt on.
That's amazing.
And we were like, you're the bravest person I've ever met.
Wow, that's just Talking Heads too. It's not nothing like Nazi punks fuck off or something like.
No, that came later. You know, then we started our band called the Vatican Commandos.
Yeah, dude, you're getting all the questions. So yeah,
Sorry.
so when did that start? So how old were you when that band started?
Well, I started playing guitar when I was around 10.
Okay.
And I studied classical music and jazz. And then I heard The Clash on the radio. And a friend of mine who had lived in the UK, his older brother had a copy of Nevermind the Bollocks, and he loaned it to me. And I learned how to play God Save the Queen.
Awesome.
And then I asked my friend Jim and our friend Chip, and I said, we should start a band. We'd never been in a band before. And I had a tiny little amp. Chip had a drum set that, I don't know, it was like a $50 drum set. And then we stole one of those Radio Shack microphones from the AV department at our high school. And Jim, the singer, sang through his stereo.
Wow.
And so it was terrible. But like suddenly we're in a band.
Yeah,
and
making music, yeah.
Covering doing like I'm So Bored with the USA, and then around this time,
What year?
This would have been 80,
okay,
81.
Okay.
There was WNYU.
Yeah.
Had this show called Noise the Show and Oi the Show with Tim Summer.
Okay.
And it was like I think Tuesday at 7 or 7:30, and it was just the only place you could hear punk rock and hardcore. And we started listening to it, and it was amazing. It was so exciting because like you'd hear, Heart Attack and Kraut and all the early New York punk rock bands.
Yeah.
And then they'd announce that there were these shows.
Okay.
And so one night we went to go see Fear.
Sick.
At the Mud Club.
Okay.
And so we went to see Fear, and it was like this room filled with like, all of a sudden we were like, wow, there are all these punk rock kids.
Yeah.
And so suddenly
we're not alone.
Yeah. And then we went to, like a couple of weeks after that, went to A7. If you remember A7.
Oh yeah. I know. I heard about it. It's never been there. Yeah. Before my time.
Not surprisingly, it was the corner of 7th Street.
Yeah.
And
now Niagara Bar for many years.
Yeah. And Dougie from Kraut was the bartender.
Oh, wow.
And so we went there to see Kraut, and he was the bartender before playing in the band.
That's awesome.
And at this point, we had heard about straight edge. So we all started drawing X's on the back of our hand. We didn't really know what it meant because we were all still drinking. But I remember I remember being 15 years old, sitting at the bar at A7, and Dougie grabbed me. We'd never met. Held me down, and with cleaning solution wiped the X off the back of my hand.
Wow. Because you saw you drinking or something, or just...
No, because he was like, we don't want any of that straight edge bullshit in here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy shit. So, okay, so you started going to shows then, and so you were seeing like mostly like local hardcore bands, right? Local New York bands?
And then, I feel like such an old guy reminiscing about this.
Like the first band that came from out of town, like you probably liked.
Yeah, well, I really feel like punk rock Grandpa Simpson. But then we got really lucky because there was a club in Bridgeport, Connecticut called Pogo's.
Okay.
Not named after the dance, named after the cartoon character.
Okay.
And
That's super old.
It was this failing Irish bar, but somehow they started booking punk rock shows. Okay. And it was 30 minutes from where we lived.
Perfect.
And it was between New York and Boston. So literally everybody played there. So we would go to New York to see shows.
Yeah.
But suddenly we're going to Bridgeport, Connecticut to see, like the Misfits and Black Flag and Flipper and Minor Threat and Circle Jerks and the Gun Club and just on. So like every touring band stopped at this crappy little bar.
That's crazy.
And so it from that sort of came like this punk rock Connecticut scene, and then the Sheridan Brothers opened the Anthrax.
Yeah, that was huge. That was huge in the late 80s too for like youth crew bands and the straight edge bands you go there. So were you going to CBGB's also at that time too?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the bands would probably stop in Connecticut there and then come to CB's. That was like...
And we go to the matinees at CB's.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes there would be a band you'd want to see, like you'd see Black Flag at Rock Hotel, and then you'd see them in because we love Black Flag so much that you just see them any chance you could.
Do you remember like what it felt like going to like your first show like that? It was out of town band or somebody that came to our town, like it's Black Flag. Was it scary? Were you nervous?
I think it was the Misfits.
Did you go in the pit? Did you dive? Did you sing?
Oh yeah,
along?
I mean, like, because I was 15, 16 years old, and at that point you're indestructible.
Totally.
Like,
fearless.
We lived, and also as we move along, we'll get to the point when I sort of left the hardcore scene.
Yeah.
It involves one of our friends.
Okay.
But I don't want to jump the gun.
Okay.
So, but the hardcore scene in 80, 81, 82, 83 was like, if you fell down, 30 people picked you up.
100%.
You know, and it was just, you went you moshed in a circle.
Yeah.
And like occasionally bumped into people, but it wasn't violent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was stage diving and people caught you.
100%.
And it was magical. It was also like a true underground scene because there was no internet. There was the closest thing to media coverage was when Fear were on SNL.
Yeah.
You know,
this is
which
famous
John Joseph and Ian were at.
Yes.
But apart from that, like you had to like find like these little record stores,
flyers, all that stuff. And so it was like a home away from home for you, probably growing up with a single mom and not having a dad. And did you have a lot of friends back then? And did you feel like going to the shows was sort of like this away from like a family kind of vibe?
Especially in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Because there weren't that many hardcore kids in Connecticut, and we all knew each other. And it was interesting because some of them were very blue collar and some of them were really preppy. Like Ray Capo, like the Youth of Today guys, and Violent Children, his band before that, like they definitely...
Crippled Youth.
Yeah. And some of them came from, like Ray, I don't know if he did because he was from Danbury, but like they definitely were like a little more of sort of like a preppy,
clean cut.
Like, and so were we.
Yeah.
You know, we were from, even though I grew up poor white trash, I was still like a scared little white kid from Darien, Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then you'd meet these like, especially the kids from New York, you know, like they were really they were actual tough guys.
100%.
You know, and they were terrifying. I was like, I just want to go back to Connecticut and like
where it's safe.
Listen to Black Flag records in my mom's house. Like,
but there was also something exciting about that kind of fear. No pun intended. Like going to punk shows and not know what's going to happen and seeing there's the local toughs, local skins, and like I'm gonna stay in my section, have a good time, and stay away from the. You know, it's like the fear kind of thing.
Until I completely agree with you, but then I remember that for me the turning point was a show. I think it was Rock Hotel at the Ritz.
Those are scary shows,
and it was like Cro-Mags, Murphy's Law. And I was like, and I remember standing up in the balcony and like skinheads with engineer boots were jumping off of the balcony, landing on people's heads. And all of a sudden I was like, this isn't really fun anymore. This isn't pretend aggression. This is actual violence. Like people are getting seriously hurt. And that's around the time I started like really listening to the Smiths and the Cure.
Okay.
I was like, well, I go to a Smith show or a Cure show and there are girls there and the music is a lot like it's more gentle. So I still liked hardcore.
Yeah.
And I would go to the occasion. And then like towards the end of the 80s, as you know, it became very sort of like conscious again.
Totally.
You know, like Earth Crisis and Shelter.
All that.
And Gorilla Biscuits.
Yep.
So like it became smarter. And it's funny becoming good friends with John Joseph because he terrified me.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
85, like he was like the scary, him and that whole crew. I wouldn't even look them in the eye.
Yeah.
They terrified me so much.
100%, me too. And as far as I'm gonna go back, but the conscious stuff too. Like I feel like a lot of the punk rock was like anarchy in the UK. Fuck your parents. Fuck this. Fuck that. Fuck the government. But then when that whole positive like youth group thing came, was like, let's fix the planet. Let's help the animals. Let's help the planet. We're drug free. We're positive. Like that was such an amazing time in New York, and it changed a lot too, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Conscious. Obviously, you got into vegetarianism and veganism before that. What got you into that? Like, how old were you when you got into that?
Well, like most people, I grew up with this weird paradox of loving animals and eating animals. Okay. You know, my house when I was growing up, we had tons of rescue animals, like lab rats and cats and dogs. Wow. We had just like this menagerie of animals everywhere. And I loved the animals, but I also loved Burger King and McDonald's. Mm-hmm. And then I guess when I was around 19, I had this epiphany where I was petting a rescue cat that we had named Tucker. And all of a sudden I looked at Tucker and I was like, wow, I would do anything to protect this cat. You know? Yeah. And I realized like, he has 2 eyes, a central nervous system, and this really rich emotional life. And in that moment, a switch got thrown in my brain where I realized, oh, every animal with 2 eyes and a central nervous system has a rich emotional life. And so I became a vegetarian then a vegan in 87.
What, was your mom a vegetarian too or no?
She dabbled because she was a hippie. So she liked tofu and bean sprouts, but she also liked pepperoni pizza.
Yeah. And it was super hard back then too, man.
It was a lot of oats.
A lot of oats, falafels, just a lot of
a lot of
rice and beans. One thing we skipped over, I want to ask you too. How were you in school? Were you a good student? Did you like sports? Did you graduate?
I had this moment when I was really little. I loved sports.
Okay.
And then I think when I was around 11 years old, almost like in one day, I lost interest in sports and only was interested in music.
Okay.
You know, like...
No skateboarding?
I skateboarded, but I was kind of mediocre.
Yeah.
And really for me, skateboard was like a way to go from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And I remember one day actually at the Anthrax. This was when it was in Stamford, the original location. And there were all these like super cool skate kids back there doing tricks.
Yeah.
And I got on like a vision board and I was like, oh, let me try something. And I fell down in front, because I knew how to
your ass in front of a bunch of people.
I knew how to go on a flat surface from point A to point B. I didn't know how to
do an ollie,
anything. I mean, I couldn't even turn around.
Yeah.
And I tried to do something and the board flew out from under me and I fell on my back and I felt so ashamed. I was like, no, I'll leave the skateboarding to the cool kids.
That was it for you then?
Yeah.
I feel like for me, also, I didn't really like sports too much. And when I got to school, I realized that a lot of the jocks played sports and those guys always made fun of me.
Yeah.
But also skateboarding was it wasn't a sport, but it was an activity. Like, okay, I'm not going to do this, but I'm going to ride a skateboard. And then I watched these videos and it was punk music playing in the background. It all connected to each other. You know what I mean? So it was kind of like the skateboarding thing for me was more like I'm not doing sports. I'm not going to be like these guys. I'm going to ride a skateboard. Because before it was trendy. You know what I mean? Like before it was like
And it had, I mean, I do remember like skateboarding had such a rebellious association.
Yeah.
And also I did notice, and this made me kind of sad, that my friends who were like the cool skate kids, they definitely had way more luck with girls than I did.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what it is about like...
Were they fashionable? Like
sort of in that like, you know, like a flex your head t-shirt and a big pair of jeans.
Yeah.
And like, I guess that was like catnip for ladies in 19...
Maybe cool bleach tips and stuff. Maybe like the Gleam in the Cube vibe or...
And I remember one time I tried to bleach my hair in... Was it high school or like early college? And it went so wrong. I don't know if you ever had this experience where like it ended up turning this like sick orange color. This is back when I had
it before.
You know, and like, so I didn't look like a cool skate kid with like blonde tips. I looked like some weird
Muppet,
like a mangy Muppet. Yeah.
Was there for the animal rights stuff? So back then, were there like marches? Not marches. Were there stuff you started getting into too, or was it just you became a vegetarian and vegan? But there wasn't much internet to give information. Was there back then?
Yeah, there were health food stores.
Yeah, health food stores. Yeah,
and
Prana.
So, yeah, I used to go to Prana all the time.
Prana was awesome. Shout out to Chalk. He used to work there, and Mark from Super Touch. Go ahead.
Oh wait, Chalk from
Burn. Yeah, he used to work there.
Yeah, I remember he used to date my friend Rory, who was
Rory's my friend too.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
Yeah.
I haven't talked to them in decades.
I talked to Chalk a lot. Rory lives somewhere. She's married. She's put on those great animal rights shows, and yeah, awesome. Small world. Rory Krevlin, shout out.
Yep. So, but
Amnesty International.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but in the 80s, finding out about anything, like I remember going to Prana or some health food store, and like you'd see like a flyer for an animal rights march in Washington Square Park, and you'd go and there'd be 20 people.
Yeah.
You know, like someone with a PETA t-shirt.
Yeah.
and it was nice, but like veganism at that point, 87, 88, into the early 90s was so small.
Nobody knew what that word meant. I remember.
Yeah, there was Angelica's Kitchen.
Yep. Dojos.
Yeah, I ate a lot of dojos, like the tofu and brown rice for $2.99.
Cheap. Yes.
But it was hard. I mean, definitely animal rights and veganism in the late 80s was pretty obscure. There was the Peter Singer book, and John Robbins' Diet for a New America. But apart from that, it was definitely obscure.
So I know you said like at that last show at the Ritz, you started like stepping away from hardcore, getting into the Cure and the Smiths and stuff like that. And obviously the Smiths had Meet His Murder out at that point too, wasn't it? 88. So you started getting into that world, but also obviously you're a punk rock kid. So how'd you get from that, getting into the Cure and stuff, to getting into DJing?
I needed a job.
Okay.
And so in 1985, I had dropped out of college because I was having the worst panic attacks. Like panic attacks that were so bad, I just couldn't function.
What was your major?
I was philosophy major.
Okay.
So I dropped out of college and moved home, and I felt like the biggest, saddest loser in the world because I was broke. I was sleeping on my mom's couch when I was like 20 years old.
Okay.
And all my friends are off at college and having great relationships and like learning skills that were going to make them rich and successful in life. And I'm like having panic attacks on my mom's couch.
Damn.
And, I didn't have $20 to my name.
Why was it happening? Just because you're stressing out about the future?
Just being a high-strung, neurotic kid.
Okay.
And I started hanging out at this tiny, weird dive bar in Port Chester, New York called The Beat.
Okay.
And
so random.
And the owner felt sorry for me. And so he let me DJ on Monday nights, and he paid me $20 for 6 hours of DJing.
Damn.
Which I thought was great.
Yeah.
Because he also got to drink for free.
Okay.
This was obviously pre-sobriety.
Okay.
And I only had 30 records. So I would borrow records from other people so I could play more music.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Joy Division and The Cure, but also some early hip hop like Grandmaster Flash.
Yeah.
And, then Run DMC when their first records came out.
Were you a hip hop head before that, like into it, or?
Yeah. I had this one moment, which is like the coolest record buying moment of my entire life, is I was in a record store in DC I was visiting a friend in DC, and I went into a record store in Georgetown, I think in the summer of 82.
Okay.
And I bought 2 records. At this point, I had barely any money. I had no record collection. The 2 records I bought were In My Eyes by Minor Threat and The Message by Grandmaster Flash.
That's amazing.
And I was like,
perfect combo.
That was a good record. And actually, I sold all my records and gave the money to charity.
Oh, wow.
And In My Eyes got the most of every record.
I'm sure it was original pressing.
It was $2,000 for a 7-inch.
Wow. That's amazing. That's original shit too. That's awesome.
It was on red vinyl, yeah.
Yeah. So did you go to hip hop shows ever back then, or?
In the late 80s I started. I was also a hip hop DJ.
Okay.
Until a similar thing happened. Like I got scared out of hardcore because it got too violent. Mm-hmm. I got scared out of hip hop because every time I'd go to a hip hop club, someone would get shot.
Yeah, for sure.
But and also I wasn't very good at it. So I was DJing at this place called Mars.
Yeah.
And
Mars Bar, I've been there on the west side, right?
There was Mars Bar, which is a tiny little bar in the East Village.
Okay.
And then there's Mars the Club, which you probably went to. Yeah, it was on West Side Highway.
Saw Fishbone there, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I was a house music DJ and a dancehall reggae DJ, but also a hip hop DJ. And one night I was DJing with Clark Kent. Do you know Clark Kent?
He's got the biggest sneaker collection ever. He's like, who Clark Kent is.
And
legendary.
Clark was so good. I stopped. I was like, I can't compete with this. Like, wow. I will never be even 1/100th as good a hip hop DJ as him. And so I got much more into like house music and techno as a result of that.
Okay. And so I know we're going back and forth. The Vatican Commandos, how long did that go for?
They kept going for a while after I left.
Okay.
I left in 83 and they went till about 86.
Did you have any amazing shows opening for some of your heroes back then, or?
Yeah, we played with Flipper, and then I got drafted to sing with Flipper because Flipper had 2 singers, and one of the singers was in jail, and I knew all the songs.
Oh, wow.
So I was one of 2 singers in Flipper for 2 days in Connecticut.
Awesome.
They don't remember this.
Okay.
Because one of the guys from Flipper lives in Beechwood Canyon, and I see him at Gelson's every now and then.
No way.
And he's like, and he'll say, he's like, yeah, we believe you that you were the singer in Flipper for 2 days, but they're like, we're so high, we have no recollection of it.
Wow.
But like we got to open for, who else? I think we opened for Bad Brains at Pogo's. And then one of our claims to fame was one of Agnostic Front's first shows was opening up for us.
No way.
in like 82 or 80.
Wow.
Like, yeah.
That's crazy. I'll have to find that flyer somehow.
Obviously,
man.
they went on to much bigger things than
Yeah.
Vatican Commandos, but that
So how long? So when you started DJing, obviously doing hip hop, and then after that, Clark Kent. So when did you start making your own music, like the music, like
the electronic music.
yeah, electronic music, yeah.
In the mid 80s, I started buying old electronic equipment at tag sales
Okay,
because it was all I could afford.
okay,
And then, I guess in like 89, I got my first record deal with a label called Instinct Records.
okay.
And I was so desperate for a record deal, I signed whatever was put in front of me. At that point, they'd never made a record. They didn't have an office. They didn't have
Damn.
employees. All they had was a name.
Okay.
And I worked as I ran their office. So I was like, clean the kitchen, clean the office, make records under different names. So it seemed like they had multiple artists on the label.
Yeah, yeah.
Like their first compilation album was me under 5 different names.
Wow.
And I would go to like UPS and the post office to like send out records. And
Yeah.
so I was like the office manager and the musician.
So people would order stuff through mail order probably back then?
Yeah, we just had, dance, like you send it to like different, like the few DJs who were playing house music and techno in like 1990, 91.
Okay, so the first record was the first record Animal Rights in 1996?
No, I put out a single. My first single was called Mobility,
Okay.
and it sold 1,000 copies. And I was amazed at that because
That's awesome. For
like
back
the
then,
Vatican
yeah.
Commandos, our first 7-inch sold 200 copies. And I felt like the biggest deal in the world because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
now had a record that sold 1,000 copies.
It's pretty big for back then, yeah.
And then my second single was called Go, and it used some of the music from Twin Peaks, and it became a European hit and sold 1 million copies.
What?
Yeah.
What year was that?
That was 91. So I went from like,
Did
I was making between $2,000 and $5,000 a year, and then all of a sudden, like flying back and forth to the UK to play at raves,
Wow.
to be on top of the pops, to do all like German TV shows, Dutch TV shows, etc.
For Go.
And then the rave scene exploded, and I sort of got really involved with that.
Did you clear that sample with Twin Peaks?
Luckily, it wasn't a sample.
Okay.
It was and this is maybe too much minutia. I wanted to sample it, but it was too slow.
Okay.
So I replayed it, and that saved me so much legal hassle. I basically tried to steal and I couldn't.
Wow.
So I had to replay it. And the nice thing about that is from that I became friends with David Lynch,
Okay. Yeah, that's huge. That's awesome.
and we've been friends ever since.
And that's probably like a childhood hero to you too, for
Oh
sure.
my God. Yeah. He's like, it's one of the weirdest things about having a strange life as a quasi public figure musician is I've managed to be friends with almost every person I idolized
Yeah.
as a teenager.
That's amazing.
Like I went on tour with David Bowie,
Yeah.
hung out countless times with Joe Strummer, just all these, John Lydon and I, he was even nice to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Lou Reed, we worked on his studio together. Like all these, like somehow I managed to like meet and become friends with all these people I idolized.
It's great when you can meet somebody you look up to and you have them like on this pedestal and then you meet them and they're actually awesome.
Although sometimes, I'm sure you've experienced this, you meet them and they're just a dick.
100%.
And then you're like, so like the other day I was out and Neil Young was at a party.
Oh, shit.
And someone said, do you want to meet Neil Young? And I'm like, you know what? No, I don't. Because I'm sure he's a nice guy, but I love Neil Young. What if he's a dick when I meet him? What if he's
Yeah.
just having a bad day? And that ruins
I know.
10 of my favorite songs. So I'm like, you know what? Nope, I don't need a handshake and a picture. Let me just let him be a stranger so I can love his music.
I love that too. My wife got to meet Robert Smith, and when we looked at him, she goes, "I don't speak English," and just shook his hand. She was so nervous. She got a picture, but she didn't want to say anything. But she didn't want to have a conversation and see if he was a jerk or not. Is it true though? When Animal Rights came out, that was such a powerful title for you to have back then because it wasn't like a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, I know what inspired that. But what was the reaction to that?
Well, so in the mid-90s, 1995, I had a really good year. I put out this album called Everything Is Wrong that was, I think, the Village Voices album of the year, something like that. And then...
Were you sober during this time?
I was sober for a while, and then I relapsed during the tour for
We'll get
Everything
to
Is
that.
Wrong.
Okay.
And I was started doing film music for this Michael Mann movie. One of the singles was a big hit single in Europe. I did Lollapalooza. I went on tour with the Chili Peppers and the Flaming Lips. Like 95 was like a big year.
Yeah.
And then I thought, you know what? I really miss making punk rock.
Okay.
And I was listening to like DRI and Biohazard, the stuff that's sort of like on the edge of like, and Pantera, like sort of like punk metal.
So you were keeping up with stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got so I made this album, Animal Rights, which is this very noisy, I wouldn't even say punk record. It's like a metal punk record. And I started having panic attacks again. My mom was diagnosed with cancer. She died. I released Animal Rights, and I go on tour. And rather than like being on tour with the Chili Peppers and the Flaming Lips, playing to 10,000 people a night, I was literally at times playing to 30 or 40 people a night. Wow. Like I remember doing the Animal Rights tour. I played a show in Paris at this place called the Arapaho. It's like a legendary old punk rock club. 100 people came. By the end of the show, there were 25 people in the audience.
Damn.
Like that's how depressing it was. Like it was pretty dark.
Wow. Did you feel like giving up?
I didn't. I mean, I thought about like going back to school and like getting my master's and becoming a teacher. And then I made the album Play, which I thought was going to be my last record. I was like, this is my last record. I guess I'll like produce other people, maybe teach philosophy.
So, but before that, is it true that Axl Rose called you?
Oh, I spent time with Axl in LA helping to produce Chinese Democracy.
Oh, wow. How did that connection?
That's telling. I haven't done this before. Like this sort of like life story.
I know. I love it.
And it kind of reminds me of, did you ever see the movie Big Fish? What that was called?
Yeah.
Where like the guy's telling it's like his dad's story, and he's like, that can't be true. And I'm like,
hearing yourself talk about it, this is surreal shit.
I'm like, how did I manage to like, I DJ'd for Run DMC.
I know.
Et cetera. You know, like became friends with David Lynch, helped Axl Rose to produce a record.
How did that happen? Like how did that connection happen?
He called me.
Just randomly.
Out of the blue, he called me in like 97 and said, I really like your album Animal Rights. They're only, okay, this is weird. So the album Animal Rights, which it sold nothing, got terrible reviews. There are 3 people I know who liked it.
Okay.
Bono.
Wow.
Actually 4 people. Bono told me it was one of his favorite records of the year.
Wow. I retire right after that.
Joe Strummer told me how much he loved it.
Sick.
Axl Rose told me how much he loved
it.
But the best is I got a piece of fan mail from Terrence Trent D'Arby.
Whoa.
On Terrence Trent D'Arby stationery. This like purple stationery.
I hope you still have that, man.
I wish I did. I don't know where
That's
would be.
some frameable shit. That's awesome.
And it was like this purple stationery. And it was just him saying like, I know you're having a hard time with this record. I think what you're doing is really interesting. Like, just be courageous. And I was like, wow, really nice.
Damn.
Terrence Trent D'Arby. I've never met him, but like out of the blue. And so Axl.
Did you believe it was him when he called you?
Axl?
Yeah, like this Axl
I think,
Rose, like...
yeah, because my manager had said, Axl wants your number. And I was like, what?
They were massive then too.
Yeah, I mean, he was like this reclusive guy who lived up in the hills.
Yeah.
So I spent a couple of weeks in LA at some studio with him and Guns and like whoever was in the...
Was it Rumbo Studios?
It was one of those big like Ocean Way...
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Sunset Sound. I don't remember.
Okay.
It was somewhere in Hollywood. I didn't know LA that well at the time.
Okay.
And I realized I was absolutely not the right person to produce it because I'd never produced a rock band before.
Yeah, that's
and so I had to like tell him, I was like, I'm sorry, like this is too big of a job.
This would be so intimidating.
For like a little kid who makes digital music in his bedroom.
Yeah.
You know?
How was it hanging out with Axl at that time?
He was
nice?
Great. He hates me now. I still don't know why, but like he really hates me.
And you know that for a fact?
Oh yeah, people have told me like they're like, and maybe it's because I decided not to produce the record. I don't know, but like apparently like I'm on his shit list.
Weird.
Yeah.
Did you hear from after you like graciously bowed out of doing the record and hear him after that?
It was like radio silence, and he was actually really nice to me. It's funny. He was just a good guy, but like I don't know what I did to piss him off, but like apparently he really hates me.
Wow. Okay, so then Play comes out, which, quote me if I'm wrong on this quote, is it one of the most licensed albums ever?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the licenses were for like indie movies, student films, etc. But yeah, we licensed, because when it first was released, my career was over.
Yeah.
I'd made Animal Rights. It failed. My mom was dead. I was broke. I was panicking. I was this bottoming out alcoholic. And I was like, and Play.
How old were you?
33.
Okay.
And I made it in my bedroom, and like with a budget of $10. You know, like
that's crazy.
A couple of the
man.
songs on that album were recorded to cassette.
Wow.
That's how.
Which ones? I loved Body Rock and I loved Honey and
it was
Outside.
Their song Ever Loving,
okay,
My Weakness, and then there's some other, I don't remember the name of it, one of the other sort of obscure songs towards the end.
So you're living in Manhattan at that point?
Living on Mott Street.
Okay.
Because it was cheap.
Shout out to Vinny Stigma, Mott Street.
Yeah.
Legend. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, what was the band you roadied for?
Sick of It All.
Yeah, Sick of It All. They rehearsed in the building I was in.
What was that studio called?
Well, it was 262 Mott Street.
Yeah.
And there were these like sub-basements, and Sonic Youth, Iggy Pop, Helmet, Hold, Butthole Surfers, everyone rehearsed down there.
That's awesome. I definitely was there then for sure.
I think, at least, because I used to see one of the guys in Sick of It All, I forget who, I would see him out front. I never talked to him because I was kind of intimidated. But so then Play came out, and it was supposed to be like this failure of an album that was like, again, it was going to be my last record, recorded in my bedroom, and it went on to be this weird,
it's insane
success.
What label was that on?
V2 here and Mute Records everywhere else.
Yeah, so that like pretty much changed everything for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
It sold like 2 million or something when it came out?
No, over 10 million now.
Wow, man. So Diamonds, you have a Diamond record.
Well, 10 million worldwide.
It's amazing, man.
Yeah.
Well, you like, how did that feel? Like, how did that change everything for you?
It was great.
The timing was impeccable. For everything you were going through, the timing was perfect.
And it was so, because again, it was supposed to be my last record.
Yeah, of course.
And like the first show we did for the Play tour was in the basement of the Virgin Megastore in Union Square.
Wow.
And my manager fought with the store manager so we could go on at 6 p.m. so that we would get commuters coming home.
Smart.
Hoping that some commuters might buy the record.
Wow.
And I think there were 40 people there. And then
that's crazy.
The tour, so like we did this, the tour started small, playing to 100 people a night, and then it was 1,000 people a night, and then 5,000, and then 10,000, and then 20,000, and then it just kept.
Man.
So, and it was great. And I was dating movie stars, and I suddenly was getting invited to all these parties. And so it was great until it went completely wrong.
But before it went wrong, how did the Southside thing happen with Gwen Stefani?
Oh,
it's an amazing song.
She and Tony came to a studio where I was working because I guess they were friends with someone at the record label.
Okay.
And she offered to sing on it. So it was really her. Like, she was just like good natured. I haven't really talked to her much since then, but like, she was just great. I mean, you could tell that she was like this woman who had come from the sort of like punk rock ska world of just like, yeah, sure, you're making a record, I'll help you out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was very low key and easygoing.
You think that video with her and everything took you to a different audience? Like that helped
especially
out?
In America.
Yeah.
Like, oddly enough, Southside outside of America, no one knows that. It was it was only a hit single here.
But it was really big here.
Yeah, because that luckily, like, we made this really expensive, good-looking video right at the peak of the album's success. So like MTV was playing it all the time.
And so how many videos, like how many singles off that record? Like did a video for how many songs? You think?
Six or seven.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And the songs were on the radio, I remember.
Yeah, it was I have to say, it was great, especially because sort of getting back to the one life, one chance aspect of this. Like, I was also drinking, and I was drinking every night. I discovered ecstasy.
Damn.
And I became terrible. Like, I became this cliched rock star where I was like going out every night and like sleeping with anybody. And it got, so then the next like 5 or 6 years pre-sobriety, it just kept getting darker and darker and darker.
But how long was that wave with Plague? How long did that go for? Like how many, You toured a lot on that. Like, how was that how long was it? Were they
The
a couple
tour,
years?
the tour for Play was 28 months. It's one of the reasons I don't tour anymore.
Yeah,
because
I hear
like when you've done a 28-month
That's
tour,
insane.
I mean, there were some breaks, but it was like 28 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next album was called 18, which did okay. I mean, it sold like 5 million copies.
Still awesome.
And then the album after that failed in the United States, but it was my biggest album. It was called Hotel.
Okay.
It was a huge album in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but at that point, like the alcoholism was like, I was being completely destroyed by it.
Well, you think you're losing opportunities and burning bridges and all that stuff, being alcoholic?
Yeah,
in industry.
And also, I hate to say this, my focus in the mid 2000s became on success. Like I started thinking, like, what producer can I work with?
I have to write with. I have to make a hit.
Yeah, who's going to give me a hit?
Keep that high.
How can I like have the right publicist? Who's going to get me on the red carpet? Who's going to get me in Us Weekly? Who's going to, like, and it really was like all driven by like fear and desperation.
Were you
and alcoholism.
Yeah, were you burning through managers and book agents and stuff like that too? Like
somehow they all
stay with you.
Yeah, which amazes me because I wouldn't have. Like, I mean, I was terrible.
So the Eminem stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What did that come from? The song Without Me, obviously that's the diss song, but
yeah,
was initially he was coming out being homophobic and you said something in the press?
Well, so here's what happened. At least this is how I remember it. And the weird thing is, I
feel weird asking that question. I don't know why.
It's fine.
I'm sorry.
No,
but I want to talk about it because it was
if
insane.
the roles were reversed, I'd ask me that question.
Okay, yeah.
I've never met him. Well, I've sort of met him, but he actually seems like smart, creative.
I know, dude. I know.
He seems like so I don't dislike him at all because I don't know him. So you remember, okay, we're talking about The Cure and the Smiths.
Yes.
How like in the 80s, modern rock radio was REM.
Yeah.
And then it was
safe.
And Nirvana. And it was like, smart and progressive.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, in the late 90s, it became rape rock. And I even like some of the music, but it became like Limp Bizkit and Disturbed. And it just got harder and darker and harder and darker. And it really disturbed me because suddenly you had lyrics that were misogynistic, that were homophobic, that were violent. And I started speaking out about this.
Yeah.
And I was doing interviews and I was asking journalists, I was like, so Eminem has songs about killing women and brutalizing gay people, and you all love him. What if he had songs about killing Jews and brutalizing black people?
Yeah.
Would you still love him? Would he still get played on the radio? Would he still get played on MTV? And I wasn't singling him out. I was just saying, like, it's an example of hypocrisy and trying to say to people, like, bigotry is bigotry. Discrimination is discrimination. Yeah. Discrimination against women is just as bad as discrimination against Jewish people. Discrimination against gay people is the same as discrimination. It's all bad.
Yeah.
Somehow he heard about this and he got mad. And I remember this.
Yeah, where were you when you first heard the song? I'm curious too.
So then I guess it was the summer of 2000, I was doing an MTV interview and the journalist asked me, they said, so why do you think Eminem has all these issues with you? And I was being funny. And I said, I don't know, maybe he's gay and he has a crush on me.
Wow.
Turns out this did not go over too well with him and his posse. And then he made
some old shit. I love that guy.
He made the Without Me video.
Yeah.
He attacked me at an MTV Music Awards.
What do you mean attacked you? Like tried to physically come after you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He actually, I still have this. He drew a picture of him strangling me and handed it to me at the MTV Music Awards.
You still have it?
I still have it.
Oh my God.
It's actually a really good drawing. I got to say, like, and to his credit, like he started on one side. This is kind of adorable.
No
He started
way.
on one side, then crossed it out, turned it over, and drew himself strangling me.
He must have drew it that night knowing you were there.
I don't know, but surprisingly good drawing.
And so...
I've got that framed somewhere.
Dude, I want to see that.
But then every night on tour, when he was touring, he had someone come out dressed like me.
Heard about this.
And he pretended to shoot them with a shotgun. And so for the next couple of years, everywhere I went, little 14-year-old kids would yell from the distance like, nobody listens to techno. And I was like, should I be concerned or should I like send Eminem like royalty checks? Because like,
yeah, I was gonna say that. How did that affect you in a positive way with your sales and people looking?
It hurt me in that like he was and still is like one of the biggest musicians in the world.
Yes.
And it definitely like in the States, like a lot of people certainly understandably took his side.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you didn't see a spike in your record sales or anything like that, or never got an apology, never got hit up by anybody from his camp. No, I mean, threats.
I keep waiting because I know I believe he's in a 12-step program.
Yeah, he is.
I keep waiting for an amends, but like, if I never get it, that's perfectly fine.
That'd be pretty amazing.
But the thing is, like, in a weird way, I feel like if we had grown up together, we would have been really good friends because we're both like poor white trash, single mom.
Yeah.
Embraced African American music, like he embraced hip hop, I
100%.
embraced house music. Like there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah,
and I wish him well.
Yeah,
I think he's an interesting, talented public figure.
Yeah, and I feel like for him back then it was all shock value, regardless if he really felt that way. What he was saying was very impactful to young people, and disrespecting women and.
Well, that's the thing. In hindsight, I think some of those guys who were homophobic, who were misogynistic, I think some of them were just bigots. In his case, I think he was being smart and playing a role, but his 12-year-old fans didn't know that.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, they just heard misogyny, they just heard homophobia, and they thought, oh, one of our heroes is legitimizing bigotry. You know?
Yeah, and nobody really confronted them on that at all. I don't know if anybody would confront them on that since. Maybe just recently they have, but and everything you're talking about now kind of fast forwards to like, not to get into that topic, but R. Kelly too. Same kind of thing. With women right now that's happening too, and people still praising him, buying his records. His sales spiked because
if you remember
of this TV show.
Chris Brown.
Same thing.
You remember, like, I was really taken aback by that. Like, Chris Brown beat up Rihanna. Like, you know, it's horrifying.
Yeah.
And then went on to sell millions of records, and people love him. It reminds me of that. There's that Chris Rock, who I really think should be president. There's a Chris Rock line where he's talking about misogyny and homophobia in music. And I'm paraphrasing him, but he's like, I'll be in a club and the lyrics will be horrifying and misogynistic and women are dancing.
Yeah.
And if you ask the women, like, aren't you listening to lyrics? And they'll say like, oh, he's not talking about us.
Exactly.
And like, there is some sad truth to that. And also like, the horrifying thing, and granted, I've never worked at a record label, but I feel like if an artist makes money, everyone around him just turns a blind eye. Like R. Kelly.
That's what's happening right now, yeah.
My friend Jim DeRogatis in Chicago is one of the people who first saw the R. Kelly tape.
Okay.
This is 15 years ago, like a long time ago.
Yeah.
And he said, it was so disgusting and so horrifying, and he gave it to the police. And nothing happened.
Wow.
And nothing. And so it's kind of like with somebody like Harvey Weinstein. I mean, I don't want to get in trouble, but like a lot of these guys, like it's been going on for a long time. Everybody knew.
A lot of payoffs, a lot of stuff going on.
But it's almost like as long as someone is powerful and making money, people go along with it, which is kind of like there's a quote like that, like, you know, all it takes for evil to triumph is for good people to say nothing.
It's a great quote. Whose quote is that?
I forget.
I'm going to say it's yours.
Okay.
How did you end up covering Creep at Glastonbury?
Oh, because, I mean, this was back at the height of my weird
we watched it the other day,
success.
Actually. Yeah.
And, I mean, now if I played Glastonbury, I'd probably be on at like 1 p.m. on like Friday, like in a tent with Weird Al or something, like opening for Weird Al.
No, because I heard they didn't want to play it, and so
that's the thing. So Radiohead the way Glastonbury works, there are 3 headliners, like similar to Coachella, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They were the Saturday headliner. I was the Sunday headliner. They very publicly said they wouldn't play Creep, and then they said, but if anyone else wants to play it, go right ahead. And I was like, okay.
So that was a known thing amongst the festival.
Yeah, and Creep is a real easy song to cover. It's only got 3 chords.
Mm-hmm. So it was great. We watched it the other day. It was awesome. People were so excited.
I never watched it, but
We just watched it the other day. Also, what do you think your life would have been if you didn't grow up so close to Manhattan? Like you're in Connecticut, you could go back and forth and be a part of it. Like if you grew up in the Midwest or something.
That's such a good question. And I sometimes wonder about that. Like, yeah, like we got lucky. Like you, me, lots of us who grew up with easy access to like a dynamic
world, man.
City.
Yeah.
Like in some ways I got really lucky because like I didn't like Connecticut when I was growing up there, but like the schools were good.
Yeah.
It was safe, and dirty, nasty New York was only 40 minutes away.
So close, train,
so we
whatever,
could like take Metro North in, go to Rocks in Your Head, go to Canal Jeans
on Broadway. That was awesome.
Go to CB's, and then like run back to Grand Central, get on the train, and go home and sleep in our comfy little beds.
Exactly.
You know.
So just imagine growing up somewhere else. I can't even imagine like not being exposed to that. What kind of person I would have turned out too. You know, like being so close to New York.
Yeah, imagine like, but I guess a lot of cities always had that like that little sliver of counterculture.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure Montana, you know, like I was talking to Reggie Watts who grew up in Montana, and he would go into Bozeman, Montana to find the punk rock club in Bozeman.
That's amazing.
You know, with the 5 other people in Montana who are interested in seeing MDC in 1984 or whatever.
You don't even think about a scene in Montana ever. I never even played a show there. You played a show in Montana?
No, I just know that David Lynch and Reggie Watts are from there.
Okay.
That's the sum total of my knowledge of Montana.
So some good people from there. So how many years now you've been sober?
10. Well, I had a lot of sobriety early on. I got sober when I was 13.
Okay.
That lasted a couple of years.
So how long you...
I started drinking and doing drugs when I was 9.
Jesus,
Stopped when I was 13. Started again when I was like 15. And then I had 8 years of sobriety from like 87 to 95. And now 10 years. And I hope it lasts. I don't know why it wouldn't.
Yeah, I don't know why either. You seem really focused on everything, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think you started doing that so young?
Fear. A lot of, part of it's just alcoholism. Like I have
in your family?
Yeah, my dad,
Oh, it's your dad, yeah.
like my grandfather, like on my mom's side and my dad's side, there's just like tons of addiction and alcoholism. So it's very hereditary.
Mm-hmm. You're a very nervous kid.
Oh yeah. And like, especially when I was really young, like when you drink and do drugs, 1, you get to hang out with the cool kids. And 2, it takes your social anxiety and just dials it down.
Yeah. Perfect.
You know, and then later, later it was sort of like a way of like talking to girls.
Yeah.
Having like feeling confidence that I never really had.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it just, obviously because I'm sober now, it just became so habitual to the point where like I couldn't go out and meet people without being drunk or high.
What was the final straw that you're like, I'm getting sober and I'm done with this?
There's that Steven Tyler quote, maybe someone else has said it, where like, it's when you finally are sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah.
I remember I had gone, it was October 17th, 2008.
Okay.
And I was playing a fundraiser for Kristen Gillibrand, the senator from New York.
Wow.
Up in Hudson, New York. And I got drunk, went to a bar afterwards, got even more drunk, bought cocaine, did a whole bunch of cocaine. 8 o'clock in the morning, couldn't sleep. So I went back to the train station and I was on Amtrak going back to the city and I was just so sick. And just like, and I realized like I'd been sick and hungover every day for like the last 5 years.
Damn.
And it wasn't
super dark place.
And it wasn't fun hungover.
Yeah.
Like when you're 16, you get drunk, like the hangovers are kind of cute.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And, but then when I was like 42 and like just sick, like just like this disgusting, like you can't think straight. You feel nauseous. Your cells hurt.
Yeah.
You look bloated and like garbage. And I was like, I'm done. And I went to an AA meeting on First and First in New York in a yoga studio.
Wow.
And I just sat there and said, my name is Moby. I'm an alcoholic. And I was like, I was done. That was it.
Wow. And it seems like you probably cared more about animals than you do yourself during that time.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons. why, like, because I never relapsed on veganism, you know,
Yeah.
from 87 until today. Like that to me was like, I don't judge other people,
Yeah.
but like if it was me, like I hope if I was starving to death and the only way I could survive was to kill an animal, I'd rather die myself. I hope. Granted, I've never been in that position and my perspective might change a lot.
It's easy to say, but yeah, I hear you on that. Yeah. Wow. I think we talked about a lot. And then also, where did the name Moby come from?
Oh,
because I read about it. I'll make sure it's true.
So this is what my parents told me, that I'm related to Herman Melville, who wrote Moby Dick.
Yep. That's amazing.
And so my legal name is Richard Melville Hall.
Yeah.
And when I was born, my dad gave me the nickname Moby. And now I'm 53 years old and I'm still stuck with my infant joke nickname.
It's a great name though.
I mean, the thing is, people always assumed like Sting, Madonna, like Bono, like you give yourself a name. I was like, no, I've had this since I was 10 minutes old. Like I probably, if left to my own devices, I never would have thought of a cool name for myself.
It's pretty amazing. And so also, I know you have one tattoo of the cross. That's the only tattoo you have?
Yeah. Because I had about 10 years as being a really serious Christian. And I got this.
I didn't even know that.
I got this tattoo in 1995 because I knew that my time as a serious Christian was coming to an end. And I sort of got it as a reminder.
Okay.
You know.
So you're not a Christian anymore since then?
No, I mean,
Who got you into that? Was how you were raised? Like, how did you get into Christianity? You find it yourself when you got older?
Oh, one of my early DJing jobs was at an all-ages youth club in Connecticut that was run by a church.
Okay.
And the youth minister and I were talking, and he sort of talked me into being a Christian.
So you started going to church and doing all that?
Yeah.
And
I taught Bible study. I went on Christian retreats.
Wow.
And I would have these, especially in the early 90s, like I would be DJing at a sex club or DJing at Limelight.
Limelight's crazy.
4:00 in the morning, I'd like go back to my apartment on 14th Street, wake up early and go to a Christian retreat in Massachusetts.
Wow.
It was a really weird dichotomy. But then time passed and I was like, you know what? The teachings of Christ are great. Like forgiveness, humility, non-materialism, non-judgmentalism. Christianity, I don't have much interest in. Like especially modern Christianity is pretty horrifying. And also the universe is so big and complicated. Yeah. So if I have to define myself now, it's like I'm a Taoist, Sufi, quantum mechanics loving
bald hippie,
vegan, something or other. I don't know. Like, yeah.
Do you feel like you're an optimistic person?
It depends about
just
what.
like optimistic with just how you live your life every day. Like, do you have rituals to make your day better? Like, I know you always play music and you do yoga. Like, there's something to get you through the day. It keeps you positive with all the shit because you go hard on Trump. You go hard on what's happening in the world right now. There's so much negative shit. So what do you consider yourself in that way? Just a realist or?
Yeah, in terms of, when I first got sober, I heard this old-timey alcoholic, because the meeting where I got sober is this meeting called Living Now, and it was like bottomed-out Bowery drunks. Like I met this one guy who'd been sober for 40 some odd years, and he wore around his neck the last bed bug he ever pulled off of himself, encased in lucite. So like these are like, and he was like in his 70s, and he'd been like one of those bums on the Bowery, just like passed out in his own diarrhea.
Damn.
And someone said something early on, which I really liked, which was self-care is a form of service. Because my life, insofar as I can, like it's dedicated to the idea of activism and service.
Yeah.
Like
it is, man. You do so much for the animals. I appreciate that, man.
It's just like the more selfish I've been, the less happy I've been. And I'm not, like when I was like really materialistic and like, as I said, like hiring publicists to try and get me on a better red carpet somewhere, like it was gross.
Yeah.
And so that selfishness didn't work out. So now, insofar as I can, I just try to wake up every day to say like, how can I be of service?
But at the same time, it's a selfless act being a vegan. You're you know what I mean? Like it's not about you, it's about the animals. And so you were that the whole time. Regardless of how crazy you got doing drugs and drinking, you still cared about animals. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, there's always that idea that like you're doing something for a cause bigger than you are.
Yeah.
And that is it makes life more interesting.
Yeah.
And in a weird way, it makes life easier. You know, when you have a purpose outside of yourself, that answers a lot of questions for you. Like, you know, like, what am I going to do with my life? It's like, oh, I'm going to try and help. I'm going to try and be of service. I'm going to try and make things better. Because I look at my friends or me in the past where it's like, when you're just focused on your own selfish concerns, you end up in like a really dark, sad place.
100%. Well, I think we covered a lot of things. Also, shout out to Tiny, your restaurant in New York. I was always to go there hoping to see you. I was always in there with my wife, so thanks for having that spot. What street was that on?
It was on Rivington.
Yeah.
I think it's been closed now for a while.
It was going after you moved away?
I ended my involvement with it in like 2006.
You remember that spot? It was super cool.
Yep.
Super teeny. And then congrats with Little Pine.
Thank you.
Great restaurant. And so I pretty much covered everything on with you. Do you have any? What would be your top 5 punk bands?
I mean, I have kind of an obvious list.
You wrote some on my page that day, so I think.
Yeah.
But I know Kraut was in there.
I had to put Kraut in there. I feel like Kraut are like there's certain bands that are just so overlooked, and Kraut, like the song "Unemployed" and "Matinee," that 7-inch, just it's great.
So Kraut.
But I wouldn't put Kraut in my top 5. Okay, so DRI.
Great.
I don't know why. Like
DRI is awesome.
I played I think the second DRI, some of that like crazy fast stuff for my ex-girlfriend, and she just started laughing. She was like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
And I was like, they kind of invented speed metal.
They could play so many songs like 30 minutes or something.
Yeah.
It's like
So DRI, Bad Brains.
Of course.
Lately, it's not a hardcore band, but I love that second Damned album,
Okay.
Machine Gun Etiquette.
Okay, yeah, it's a good one too, yeah.
I mean,
Life loves
I don't
them.
really like the rest of their catalog that much,
Yeah.
but that album from start to finish is just so good.
So Damned, Bad Brains, DRI,
Black Flag.
Black Flag.
And then it's a weird one because I didn't make that many recordings, but Void
Void's awesome.
from DC.
Yeah.
But we could, I mean, like
The last one's going to be a hard one, though. Ramones? No, it's...
I liked some of the songs,
Okay.
but I never, I'm trying to think. Okay,
Got Dead Kennedys,
oh,
we got
man.
Minor Threat, we got...
That's the thing. It's like
hard, man.
And I want to, I mean, of course I want to put Minor Threat in there, but I feel like every single person's going to put, so I like have to, I mean, like, yeah, Minor Threat.
Well, you saw them, so that's amazing.
At Great Gildersleeves, yeah.
That's amazing.
Who else would it be? Okay, I mean, okay, so we got Bad Brains, DRI, Damned, Black Flag, and then I really, that fifth one I got, you know what? This is going to be a little weird.
Circle Jerks? No.
I'm going to put Pantera in there.
Wow.
I love, and I know that
they're not really a hardcore band, but...
No, but you listen to some of the songs from like, I mean, some of those songs are hardcore songs.
Okay.
You know, I mean, like so fast. And
interesting. That's really interesting.
I don't know. And I had a night out with Daryl. This is obviously way pre-sobriety. One night I was out with Daryl.
And pre this too on video. Yeah.
Yeah, I was out with Daryl and Tommy Lee and Vinny, the drummer.
Okay.
And in Dallas. And it was like, we were going to start a band together at 4:00 in the morning, out of my mind on liquor and drugs. We were going to start a band called the Sober Fucks.
I like that.
So me, Tommy Lee, Daryl, and Vinny were going to start a band.
Tommy Lee?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. That's crazy.
Yeah, Phil wasn't there.
Okay.
I've never met him. But like, I don't know, those Pantera records, even the later ones, like Great Southern Trendkill.
Okay. You're not a Slayer fan? Slayer fan?
Too much kick drum. Like I went to see them live at Irving Plaza and I was like, I understand the kick drum is an integral part of it, but like it's all I could hear was the kick drum.
Okay. I get that.
I like them, but like boy oh boy, Pantera, like I listen to a lot
It's so
of Pantera.
left field. I'm so shocked right now that you even say that. I can't expect that.
But those
you know
records, you know, everything that I mean, like the song War Nerve.
Okay.
If I had to point
I'm not familiar with them at all. I should.
It's, I mean, the fast stuff, they were like the fastest of fast, like Bad Brains level speed.
Yeah, DRI's fast too, though.
Yeah, I mean, DRI's that like crazy, like fastest of the.
Okay,
fast.
if you could name your 5 top hip hop MCs.
Rakim, number
Best.
1.
Best.
I mean, again, my list is kind of obvious, like Rakim.
Great.
Cool Keith.
Cool Keith. That's random
love
too.
Cool
I
Keith.
love him too. He's really interesting.
Jay-Z.
Yeah. Get to him.
Especially the like the mid to late 90s
Yeah.
Jay-Z stuff.
the Black Album stuff's great. Those are two of mine already.
Oh, you know what I heard the other day that blew me away? How talented he was. Young MC.
Really?
The song. It was not the what's the like.
He had the one hit.
He had that one hit. He has this other track. I think it's called the Know How.
Okay.
And it's the fastest. Like
Is it
the
the-
word play is phenomenal.
He had Bust a Move.
Yeah, Bust a Move, which is like obviously disposable.
You're not going to put him in your top 5 though.
Go listen to this. And then the other would be Casanova C.
Oh yeah, I heard that too. There's
Casanova
okay.
from the mid 80s.
Do you like KRS-One or
Yeah, Karis was great.
Beastie Boys or De La Soul?
But as far as I'm thinking most talented
One MC,
rappers,
yeah,
and it would be like so Casanova,
Rakim,
Jay-Z, and I'm gonna put Young MC in
That's
there.
crazy.
If you listen to this song, I think it's called The Know How.
Dude. Okay.
And it's, his delivery is so good.
Okay.
It's amazing.
So Pantera and Young MC already fucked me up. So was that 5 MCs?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think that's better.
And Cool Keith. Yeah.
Cool Keith.
Just because he's the most. I remember hearing him freestyle on WNYU a long time ago, and I was like, I don't even know what planet this is coming from.
Does Moby binge watch Netflix?
Do
you watch TV shows? Like what's the show you're watching right now?
Right now, I'm having a little bit of a crisis because I don't know what to watch.
Did you watch Narcos, the new one?
I haven't watched Narcos. Should I watch
really
Narcos?
good,
Okay,
yeah.
maybe I'll give Narcos a chance. I mean, I watch all the obvious middle-aged guy stuff like Homeland,
Okay.
et cetera. You know, like
And then the one that HBO, The Escape from the So-and-so Prison, Patricia Arquette, Benicio del Toro. It's an incredible story.
what's it called?
Escape from Dannemora.
Oh, I haven't heard of it.
True story about Patricia Arquette's character who has like a love affair with 2 inmates and they break out. It happened in 2015.
I gotta say, Patricia Arquette in True Romance.
Woo!
That's
All-time
you
crush.
posted that the other day.
That's my shit. Favorite movie. All-time crush.
I want to talk forever. I have to get going.
Oh, good. Well, great. We covered everything. And you're a True Romance fan?
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say Moby.
That scene, like, it's so romantic.
I know, I love
after
that.
he kills all the guys.
I want to thank you for being an awesome human, being my friend, using your voice, using your platform for the animals, everything you've done with your career. I'm honored to call you my friend, and I appreciate everything you do with your voice.
Well, thanks. Right back at you. And I really want the Morses to be a TV show.
All right, we'll see what happens.
Like,
All right, that'd be awesome.
some of those videos are the funniest things I've ever seen. Like,
Thank you, man. Thank
Yeah.
you. Max loves you. All right, thank you, man. Thanks for being on the show, and I think we covered
Cool.
it all, right, guys?
yeah.
Awesome, Moby. Thank you.
That's gonna be kind of like my MO, where after I do an interview, I wait and I realize, oh shit, I had more questions for them. So usually there's gonna be some extra stuff at the end of all my episodes. It's kind of like the theme or what I've been doing. I'm sorry, I'm just a spaz and I don't get all the questions I need to, and sometimes I just like OCD and bug out on the what I could have, should have asked them, and I get them back on the phone.
Forwards, I got it. Okay, awesome. All right, so Moby, now we're recording now, but so I interviewed you last week, and there was still a couple more questions I wanted to ask you. We ran out of time, so here goes the questions. So one of them was, when did you move to LA, and why did you move to LA?
Well, so I've been born in New York, and I honestly thought that I would spend my entire life living in the city.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, growing up, because I've been born in New York and grew up in Connecticut, and when I finally moved back to New York in the 80s, I just thought, like, where else in the world would I ever want to live? And then as time passed, a few things happened. One, I got sober.
Yeah.
And pretty much the moment I got sober, I realized New York is an amazing place to be a drunk. And
Yeah.
it's a really challenging place to be sober. Because the culture in New York, as you know, it's all about drinking and staying out until 4 o'clock in the
Yeah.
morning. And, I mean, it's
You
about
don't have to drive.
degeneracy.
Yeah.
You know, you think of the songs that have been written about New York, like, you know, Walk on the Wild Side, and it's about getting really messed up.
Yeah.
And I started thinking to myself, I was like, okay, so where in the world could I live where I can, like, go hiking in the winter, be around creative people, eat good vegan food,
Yeah.
and live in a nice house that's not too expensive? And honestly, LA was just top of that list. So I
Yeah.
moved here about 10 years ago, and I have to say, especially now, like it's, we're talking and it's January,
Yeah.
and I'm going to go hiking later, and it's supposed to be 72 and sunny today.
Amazing.
Going hiking outside in jeans and a t-shirt in January when the rest of the world is freezing cold and miserable is pretty great.
Yeah, it's like we live in a little bubble too in California too. Like you don't realize there's actually a winter going on right now because we have our sunshine. Is there anything you miss about New York though?
The only thing I miss about New York, because I still have a little apartment in Brooklyn that I go back to every now and then, but the main thing that I miss, and it might sound kind of weird, well, two things. One, I miss trees that don't need irrigation.
Yeah. That's
there's something nice about like when you're like in Central Park or Prospect Park or upstate, just being around like trees that get adequate rain as opposed to LA. Like I feel like we're always an inch away from like climate catastrophe here.
No, I agree.
I guess the other thing I miss is simply being young. I mean, I'm sure you had the same experience. Like when you're young and you're in New York and like you're in the center of the world and everything seems possible.
100%.
And like in my case, because I was a drunk, like, when I was in my 20s, I could go out drinking and I didn't really get hungover. And the world, like New York just felt really like safe but exciting at the same time.
Yeah, and you could walk everywhere. You didn't have to count on having to drive if you were drunk. You jump on a train or a subway, and that was pretty. It kind of enabled you to actually live that lifestyle too. You didn't have to really have much responsibility.
And it was. I mean, it is a really great place. Really, it was. Like in the late '80s, early '90s. New York was just filled with musicians and writers and directors, and everybody you met was creative. And I still love New York, but now it's the land of finance people.
It's so different.
Yeah.
So you mentioned sobriety too. How different is it writing music being sober now?
Well, it's actually a lot better because I had this period after the success of albums like Play and some of the other records I made. I had this period where I was like drinking a lot and doing tons of drugs, and I'm ashamed to admit it, but I started at times making music that I thought would help me to stay famous. And in hindsight, it's really disgusting. Like I'm really like repulsed that I ever did that. And now, I mean, especially as you know, like no one pays for music. So for any of us to work on music, we have to love what we're doing because there's no other reason to do it.
100%.
So when I'm making music now, I don't ever think of making money from it. I think simply of, loving the actual process of making music.
Yeah, and you're focused on it too. You're not like it's purely for the love of it, not like you said for fame or to stay relevant or stay on the you know what I mean, like stay in the public eye and stuff.
Well, especially I mean, like as a 53-year-old guy, if I was still trying to be relevant and competing with pop stars, like that would be tragic.
Because the techno world is extremely different than it was back then, and it's extremely or EDM, whatever they call it now. But like, there's so many massive DJs now. Do you feel like you're like the OG of that?
I mean, accidentally a little bit.
Yeah.
It's always funny when people think I'm a DJ because my background was playing in punk rock bands. Yeah. And playing in bands that tried to sound like the Smiths. So I just thought it was. So of course I know how to DJ, but it's I came to DJing way after I started playing in punk rock bands and emo bands.
Yeah, so I guess Skrillex and people like that they're considered DJs basically, right? They just play music, or they're not. Are they playing their own music, or are they writing their own music? I'm confused.
Well, Skrillex is interesting because I think he's similar to us. Like he grew up playing in punk rock bands and then came to DJing. But a lot of, especially a lot of the European DJs, they're really good at what they do, but they've only ever been DJs. And what's funny is if you talk to them about music, a lot of times they don't, and I don't mean this as a criticism, but they actually don't know anything about music. Like,
Yeah.
you sit down at a keyboard, and if you say to them, like, play an A minor chord, they'll quite literally have no idea what you're talking about, but they can still make really, they can make these records that sound great in a stadium in front of 75,000 people.
Yeah.
And it is a weird world, especially because a lot of these DJs become very famous really, really quickly.
Yeah.
Like Avicii. And one of my favorite stories is Martin Garrix, who's a DJ from the Netherlands. And I think his first or second record now has something like 3 billion plays on YouTube. And he went from like being a kid in his bedroom to quite literally 6 months later, like standing in front of 100,000 people on stage.
Insane.
And some of the venues where he was asked to play, he had to get a waiver from his dad because he was only 17.
Wow. That's crazy.
And it can happen. I mean, like, so some of these guys, like, it just happens so quickly. And obviously a lot of them, like, tragically, like what happened to Avicii, like, they're not prepared, to go from being like an obscure kid with a laptop in your bedroom to suddenly, being in Las Vegas and having people throwing liquor and money and drugs at you.
Yeah, it's insane. I remember Skrillex had a band called From First to Last, and he was signed to Epitaph, and he was a little punk rock kid in the Warped Tour. And it was pretty cool to see that transformation. Like all of a sudden, that band broke up, and all of a sudden he came out as a DJ. And I actually ran into him not too long ago, and he was super awesome and super like humble, and so that's pretty cool to see people do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, how did you end up working with Britney Spears? I saw that.
When I started making my own records, I started getting asked to remix or produce other people. So over the years, I don't do it so much now because it can honestly sometimes be kind of stressful.
Yeah.
But I've either produced or remixed, Ozzy and David Bowie and Freddie Mercury and Michael Jackson and Britney Spears.
Public Enemy.
And everybody from, Daft Punk to Soundgarden to whomever. And a lot of it I did, one, in the early days I did it because it was a way to make money.
Yeah.
But then it just became like such a weird, interesting way to like learn about how other people approached making records. I have to say, I remixed Beat It, the Michael Jackson song.
Wow.
And I still have the master tapes somewhere. I should find out where they are.
Did you do that for hit? You were asked to do that?
Wow.
Yeah.
And so Quincy Jones sent me the master tapes, and I have to say that's when I realized what a genius Quincy Jones was, because like the master tracks for Beat It are like even if it was never even mixed, it was like just so well put together. And I'm not a huge Michael Jackson fan, but I have to say, like, the production behind that song really blew me away. So that's one of the reasons why I like working with people, is because you get to learn how they work. So Britney Spears, I guess, we wrote a song together, and it was the height of her success. And I think I sort of said yes just because it seemed like such a weird thing to do. Like, this bald kid who used to play in a hardcore band suddenly writing a song with the biggest pop star on the planet. Yeah,
that's amazing, man. Like, it's like, so that experience with her, would you get to actually do in the studio, or was it just something you recorded and sent to her? Did you
Both.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and we met up a few times, and I have to say, she was great. Like, she was nice and humble and easy to get along with, easy to work with.
Yeah.
I thought I was expecting her to be sort of a prima donna, and she was actually just really great. That's
awesome. Okay, so two more. So one more is that you've been vegan for so long before that word was even a word. Like we talked on the podcast, eating at dojos, eating falafels, eating just whatever we could back then. And now to see it come where it is today and how the world's changing drastically. What are your feelings on it currently? And also, like, what do you think the biggest misconception is of vegans still? Besides, obviously the protein thing, but something that kind of annoys you, or like just people don't get about us vegans.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is amazing to see how far it's come. And now you have, like, I mean, National Geographic just had a huge article basically saying that in order for humanity to survive, we have to stop using animals for food.
Amazing, man.
Looking at the environmental aspect
Yeah,
of it.
of course.
And, The Economist and the Observer, all these newspapers and magazines basically saying, like, animal agriculture doesn't work. Like, it's destroying the planet and it's destroying animals.
Yeah.
I think the biggest misconception, and I actually don't think it's a misconception about vegans, I think it's a misconception that people have about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to have this before I went vegan, which was the belief that you can love animals and also contribute to their torture and death.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you
Mm-hmm.
you can't be a good person who cares about children and also be a pedophile. You
100%.
can't be you can't be a progressive Democrat and also be a member of the KKK and go to cross burnings. Like, you can't love animals and be involved in anything that causes them to suffer and die.
Yeah, so how do those people? That's the one thing, people don't make that connection. Like, I'm a dog lover, I rescue dogs, I love dogs, but then you're eating hamburgers. And I don't understand how people just can't make that connection. It's like,
I mean, I think a lot of it is we don't see, like, when someone goes to buy meat, they go into the supermarket and, next to the oatmeal and the soap is, a piece of hamburger wrapped in plastic and styrofoam. And so they don't think about where it comes from.
Yeah, exactly.
And I really have to believe that most of the people on the planet, if they truly knew what was happening to the animals who were being, raised and killed, they would, in an instant, become vegan. But, like,
100%.
that industry, they do everything in their power to make sure that, like, people never know how the animals are treated. As we know, we have these ag-gag laws
Mm-hmm.
that are all being overturned, but it's the meat industry trying to keep people from documenting how animals are treated on factory farms and in slaughterhouses.
Yeah, I think that and also I also think when people actually see something, if you post something that's kind of not just intense, but something that's super factual and it's a reality, and people see it, they automatically get offensive, and they're on the offense because I feel like it makes them think about themselves and how what they're eating and how they're like, oh my God, I mean, I contribute to that. But so when they see it, they get so, like, they feel like you attack them, but it's just something that's the truth. And I think that if more people saw more documentaries and stuff too at schools or whatever, I think people would be more conscious to it. Yeah,
I totally agree.
It's like,
and it is worth asking people, like, if the truth makes you uncomfortable, like, if your actions make you uncomfortable, then maybe it's time to, like, question the actions and not the truth.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, I feel like the world's going in a good direction as far as that's concerned, and more people. Even if I always say too, even if, like, vegan is a trend or people are being vegan now because it's their health or it's something personal or it's for the animals or it's for the environment, the bottom line is it's saving animals. And, like, so I'm happy if it is a trend because it's a super healthy, positive trend for the planet. And I love when people try, and
yeah, me too. I mean, it's sort of like I realized, like, by most people's standards, I'm a complete cliche. Like, I live in Los Angeles, I do yoga, I'm a vegan, I go hiking, I meditate sometimes. And I was like, but if you're going to be a cliche, like, it's better than the cliche I was 12 years ago when I was, having 15 drinks a night and spending $200 on cocaine every day and suicidal and depressed and sick. Like, you're going to be, like, if there's going to be a trend, why not a healthy trend that saves animals, saves people, and saves the environment? Like, so
I love that.
It's much better than a trend of people killing animals and eating food that makes them sick and also destroys the only home we have.
100%. All right, final question. So I asked you that the other day. I think we got sidetracked, but do you consider yourself a pessimistic or optimistic person?
Both.
Okay.
It depends. Like, I mean, if it weren't for climate change, I would be very optimistic because I think we're, there are a lot of things that indicate we're all moving in a really good direction.
Yeah.
The only thing is climate change is so serious. And, like I was reading an article recently, and it said that the last time the Earth had this high a concentration of CO2 and methane in the atmosphere, sea levels were 300 feet higher than they are now.
Holy shit.
So
wow. That's
I
insane.
think that, there's a chance that humans will survive climate change, but unfortunately, the way it looks now, like probably like 70% of humanity won't survive climate change. So it's that question of like, what sort of civilization and culture will we have after the climate apocalypse? Where we all have to live in Alaska and Canada and Scandinavia, and but maybe that's what's needed. Like sometimes in order to get people to change, like if they're completely unwilling to change, they sometimes need to be faced with, incontrovertible evidence that, the way they've been living is really, really not healthy or sustainable.
Yeah. And then I would say on the other side, not saying I know how you feel, but like as far as being like a positive person, I feel like you get to do what you love. You do music for a living. You know what I mean? Like you get to have your own time scales. You have no boss. You get to, you know what I mean? Like I feel like in that sense, life is great for you. Well,
and I do love that, I don't have a normal job.
Yeah.
That, I've been able to save enough money so I can like not have to worry about paying the rent.
Yeah.
But to me, that's also, from that is like, it becomes like, it's that question of like, if you have good circumstances, what do you do with them? True. And the question I always ask myself is like, I don't want to be selfish. Like, I have a comfortable life, so that means that I should do everything in my power to go out and be of service. Like
100%.
We know lots of people who are just focused on being selfish, and
yes, and they're miserable.
And it seems like such a waste of opportunity and such a waste of resources. Like when you can go out and you can help people, help animals, help the world, isn't that a better use of a life than just being selfish and trying to see what selfish things the world can give you?
Yeah, and that fulfills you, because you do donate a lot, and you do a lot of things for animal, and you use your platform and your voice to help the animals and help the planet. So I feel like that definitely probably fulfills you, fulfills your heart. Right?
Yeah, and it's a little bit of a paradox that like the more, at least in my life, the more selfish I've been, the less happy I've been.
Yeah.
And the more I focus on trying to be of service and trying to, help animals, help the environment, help other people, the more I focus on that, sort of paradoxically, the happier I am.
Yeah.
Like the less money I spend on myself, the happier I end up as a person.
That's awesome. And do you have like daily rituals that you do, like yoga or like you said, meditation? Do you have something you do every day that's like something you do to start your day or to get you through the day, or?
Yeah, and it sounds like, everything you just mentioned. I eat well. I try to eat mainly organic food, and I go hiking, and I exercise, and I meditate, and do yoga, and I do all those things.
Yeah.
So it's the idea of, for us to be of service, we have to take care of ourselves.
100%.
And I'm sure you see this all the time, like with activists, where they're always burned out. And I'm like, the world needs activists for to stay alive and be healthy. So like sleeping well and being sober and, it's kind of like the name of your organization, like One Life, One Chance.
Exactly.
And, to have a good life and, be of service, you need to take care of yourself. So
mentally and physically. Yeah.
Yep. So that's a huge part of activism is actually self-care.
Yeah, people. I never heard anybody really talk about that. People really talk about that. It's all about like you said, people go super hard. Say it's for the animals every single day. They don't think about themselves. They don't take care of themselves, and then they burn out pretty quick. And yeah, it's good to have a balance there. And I feel like you have that balance down.
Well, because I went so far to the other extreme of drinking and doing drugs and being selfish and wanting to die all the time. So like this is this is a much healthier way of approaching things.
It's crazy because, yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing you were vegan through all that too. You know what I mean? Like you were wilding out, partying, sleeping with women, and being crazy, but still were conscious of the animals through all that. And that's pretty amazing, man.
Yeah, that's like the only constant.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was sort of like, in 1987 when I went vegan, I was like, that's it.
Stuck to it.
This will never change. And I hope it never does. Like it's, I'm sure you get these questions a lot. Like people are like, okay, if you're on a desert island and you're starving to death and the only thing that you could do to stay alive is kill rabbits and eat them, would you? And I was like, well, I have never been in that situation, so it's hard to say, but I guess a core of my worldview, my belief, is that my life is no more important than the life of an animal.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that I would recognize that and say, like, look, just because I'm human doesn't make me more important or valuable than a chicken or a rabbit or a cow or a pig or anything. So I just really don't believe that, killing another creature is ever called for me to stay alive. Like, I'd rather die than kill another creature.
I agree. And people ask me too, I have been straight edge my whole life, so it's like, would you eat meat or would you try weed? And I have to say, man, that I would probably try weed. I probably would never eat. I can't see myself eating an animal ever again. Like, I couldn't do it, man. Like,
yeah, I'm much more comfortable hurting myself than hurting someone else.
Yeah, I mean, I never want to be in that situation where I have to do that. But yeah, I could never do that, man. It's crazy. All right, awesome, Moby. I think we talked about a lot, and I appreciate your time. And thank you once again for being a voice, being my friend, and doing what you do. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, well, I feel like I should send you a check because it's been like therapy.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much, and hopefully I'll see you soon.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I'm around, so let me know when we should meet up with Tony and go get, middle-aged guy vegan lunch somewhere.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, bro, so much.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Hey, guys, thanks for listening. Please rate, review, subscribe. If you haven't subscribed yet to this podcast, please do that. And whatever platform you are listening to this on, I'm glad you found me. You can rate me and review me on there also. So thank you guys sincerely for the support. I cannot wait for you guys to the next one.